Westpac profits plunge, but they won't bail in your redraw. Let's have a look. Hello everyone, Florian.Heise here, and welcome to another episode of HeiseSays. I have my stein of coffee in hand, and I thought we'd have a look at a few articles discussing Westpac's, well, sharp decline in profits, and the fact that they're not going to bail in your redraws. Now, if you remember, a few days ago we looked at an article discussing ME Bank, Members Equity Bank, which started bailing in redraws, or pretty much reducing people's redraws, which is completely within the contractual conditions that people had signed up for. They were mistaking redraws as savings when they're advance payments off your mortgage, which the bank can take away. Now, I think it's a lesson for a lot of people to maybe read what they're signing, but it's like the old South Park episode with the Apple user agreement. Who actually does? We should. So some people, I think, got a hard lesson, and this is why Westpac is having to come out with this announcement, particularly when their profits have gone down, 70%. Now, let's jump, before we go through this article, we'll just jump over to TradingView, and we can see here the stock chart from Westpac Bank, and in February it was at $25, and now we're at $15.77. The technical little thing down here is telling us to sell if you are interested in that type of stuff. If we jump back here, we can just get an overview of where it's going. I mean, that's a big drop from the 20th of Feb, guys. So you've lost not quite half, $10 a share if you had bought it at 25. Imagine if you got in a bit earlier, $30 a share. So we're down from September last year, we're at half of that level. So let's have a look at this article, and this is written by James Hall from news.com as the first one we'll look at. So Westpac's cash profit plunged 70% in what was described as the most difficult result in many years as the cost of the pandemic weighed heavily on the major bank. Its interim cash profit lost nearly $1 billion for the 6 months to March 31, and it joined ANZ in deferring any dividend paid to shareholders as it forecasts house price falls throughout 2020. See, this is the thing, guys. I'm starting to realize that you've got different actors in the media. Well, I'm not starting to realize, I'm aware of it, but it's becoming more and more evident now. You've got the property permabulls, and they're going, oh no, it's still a good time to buy. And I've got a few videos lined up for later today that I want to record. It's still a good time to buy, even, it'll only go down 10%, it'll only go down 20%. It'll all be good in the future, guys. Get in now, get in quick while the cash rate is so low. I swear the more of these things I read and look at, the more grey my beard is getting. NAB slashed its offering to those holding its stock last week when it announced it would pay a dividend of just 30 cents per share following guidance from prudential regulator APRA that banks and insurers should seriously consider doing so until the economic outlook is clearer. And that's going to be a hit for people, particularly those that are investing in a dividend return strategy, which, frankly, I like the idea of. And I might look at after the economy adjusts a little bit. I think there may be some bargains out there in a few months' time, or maybe a year's time. Let me know what you think, guys. Do you think, the banks are going to take a hit? Do you think they'll, return to their days of the nice dividend cash cows that they were in the future, or are you planning for other things? So, for comparison, Westpac paid 94 cents per share to holders in the first half of last year. This is the most difficult result Westpac has seen in many years, Chief Executive Peter King announced to the ASX this morning. It is significantly impacted by higher impairment charges due to the pandemic, as well as notable items including the AUSTRAC provisions. Mr. King said the once-in-a-lifetime health crisis, well, I wouldn't even say it's once in a lifetime, it's once in a century. It's once in a century what we're having here. Had become an economic crisis, with Westpac expecting Australia to suffer a sharp contraction in 2020 before a solid rebound in the December quarter. A solid rebound in the December quarter. They're all predicting this, or they're all hoping it. Will we get it? Will we get it? I'm just thinking, I'm dwelling on if it will appear, if it will materialize. Maybe there's going to be increased demand for tourism. It'll start flooding back to the country, and that $60 billion part of our economy will reinvigorate. But will the tourism or bubble that we're having with New Zealand, which really should just become a state? If anything, this is just showing them that they're so dependent on Australia, they should become a state. Sorry to all the Kiwis in the comments that are gonna slam me for that, but it's definitely something I like to tease all my Kiwi friends about. But they're predicting a rebound in December. What's going to pull it up? What's going to pull it up? Let me know your suggestions, guys, if you can think why, because I just keep hearing it again and again. They're thinking that the economy will open back up and we'll just jump right back to it, but the jobs aren't going to return. Some retailers aren't going to appear again, and many people will have to just have adjusted their spending habits and have adjusted their behaviors. So back to here. It is forecast unemployment to peak at 9% in June and ease to 7% by the end of the year, but house prices will fall through to Christmas, revising recent recoveries, particularly in Melbourne and Sydney. Now, what I will bring up right here to show you, well, look at business confidence, guys. That is atrocious. But some data that just came out yesterday that I did a video on. This is the job advertisements, and it can be a leading indicator for unemployment. Now, it's definitely something we need to worry about, guys, because that unemployment is pretty low. Well, the figures that they're saying. If you compare it to Roy Morgan, they've got right now unemployment and underemployment at 25%. So what's this chart telling you, guys? If we lay it over business confidence, it's not filling me with much confidence, nor that we'll get a good return, a bounce back in December. But what would maybe some new exciting policies or new ways, special economic regions, removing some red tape, not just replacing one tax with another tax, not just doing everyone into property game. That's all I'm hearing from our leaders at the moment. Is there anything else that you're hearing out there? More shock and surprise that this is having an impact on the economy, which doesn't fill me with much confidence. So, while the rest of the world is also facing significant economic disruptions, Australians' exports will likely benefit from the recovery in the Chinese economy, the Westpac chief said. Well, perhaps. He's got a good point there. It could. That's the only chance we have. But we're hearing that more and more, where people are pinning their hopes of Australia on a domestic Chinese recovery, just like the GFC. And they keep saying that for a very simple reason. This is from the OEC, the Observatory of Economic Complexity. This is what Australia exports. We're a quarry. Okay, guys? We're a quarry. Everyone seems to pretend we're an advanced civilization, where sure we are, but all the advanced stuff we have is imported. We're a colonistic quarry. Okay, come on. If anything, our ability to manufacture advanced things has gone backwards in the last, 100 years, 50 years. And that's represented in our economic complexity, where our economy is 59th in the world, according to the OEC. But for the Harvard guys, the Harvard, they're ranking us even worse. They're suggesting that we are, and I'll bring it up, the website's a bit slow, 93rd in the world. Okay, so they're pinning all our hopes that increased demand for these goods will be driven by China importing more of our stuff. So we're dependent on them. And this is where I'm learning that people are telling me that the Australian currency is used as a proxy for the Chinese economy. Just think about that, everyone. Think about that. I mean, bloody hell. Yeah. So that's what they're hoping for. Even our treasurer is hoping for that. He was hoping domestic demand would require it. Will the Chinese economy rebound? Will the animosities now that are the political posturing that's going on between China and Australia, the US and China, will that materialize in reduced demand for our resources? There's the question. Will the Victorian government save us by jumping into bed with the One Belt, One Road initiative? Or does Australia have what it takes to start competing on a global scale? I'd argue our biggest issue we have is that our market is very small. Our population isn't that big. And so it's a conundrum. We're facing all of these issues, particularly we've got a housing bubble, and hang on, I'll bring this up here. Oh, wait, unit price growth, sorry, property prices. We've got a property price bubble, a housing bubble. They haven't kept up with wages. We've got wages that are depressed. So you want to increase our population. But the problem is, if you look at our population growth compared to GDP, we're actually trending lower than we were in the past. But you want a bigger population because you want a bigger market. So you want to have the scale so you can get the economies of scale as other big markets. So there's a bit of a challenge that Australia is facing, because we're never going to have the scales of the US, we're never going to have the scales of European nations, at least the bigger ones, or China. So how do we meet that challenge, guys? How do we meet that challenge? Unfortunately, ongoing international travel restrictions will continue to flatten inbound tourism and impact foreign student arrivals. Well, yes, our education sector, our university sector is dependent on international students. And I feel sorry for them, particularly seeing how much they were paying and what they were getting, particularly in my architecture degree. Mr. King said the major lender will play a vital role in supporting the country and helping to get business ticking along once the pandemic eases. We're continuing to keep credit flowing in the economy, and we have tailored relief packages to help consumers and businesses, he said. It is vital that when we get to the recovery phase, businesses are ready to reopen and support as many Australians back into work as possible. Now, there are going to be challenges to these businesses reopening. And I suspect a lot of businesses, or I hope, well, here's the thing. Are they going to borrow money to prop themselves up and to keep them going? That's the risk you have to take. A consumer is going to be back straight away. Or a business is going to adapt to the new cost-saving methods they may have discovered working remotely. How's that going to affect commercial property, everyone? I know I am much happier working from home than when I had my retail space. All those extra costs, they add up to a business, particularly SME. So the pandemic has decimated the financial sector, with Westpac shares plummeting nearly 37% so far this year. On Thursday, ANZ Chairman David Gonski said the decision to hold off on paying a dividend was not a reflection of the bank's financial health. He said ANZ had not received any concerns from APRA regarding capital levels. The board agrees with the regulator's guidance that deferring a decision on the 2020 interim dividend is prudent, given the present economic uncertainty, and that making a decision at this time would not have been appropriate, Mr. Gonski said. This was a very difficult decision, and the board considered all options available as we understand the impact this will have on the shareholders who rely on dividends. ANZ said it would consider all factors over the coming months and will continue to assess the evolving situation, including the severity of community lockdowns, before determining a final position on the interim dividend. So Peter King takes over. Last month, Westpac handed the leadership to the man who steered the major lender through the early stages of its exploitation scandal, announcing the acting chief executive, Mr. King, would take over the role on a permanent basis. The veteran of the bank was due to retire last year, but was thrust into the main seat after former boss Brian Heise resigned in the wake of the Austrac allegations of 23 million breaches of money laundering and counter-terrorism financing laws. I mean, that just shows you systematic failure in their systems, doesn't it? Westpac chairman John McFarlane said Mr. King's 25 years experience with the country's oldest bank will be pivotal in times of destructive uncertainty as the pandemic wreaks havoc on both international and local economies. I believe we need a chief executive in place now, not later, and with full rather than acting authority, he said in a statement this morning. The new chief executive and executive team had their hefty bonuses cancelled last year due to the exploitation scandal. Mr. King, who has the major lender's former chief financial officer and chief risk officer, who was the major lender's former CFO and CRO, will pocket a base salary of $2.4 million and will be eligible for as much as $9.2 million, including entitlements, according to the AFR. Though the figure is unlikely to reach this high given the expected reduction to revenue as a result of the pandemic. Westpac's crisis began when financial watchdog Austrac revealed last year it was facing charges after allegedly failing to investigate customers who made transactions possibly linked to exploitation in the Philippines and Southeast Asia. Well, there you go. Oh, it's just terrible what they were potentially linked to, but it just shows you they need to tighten their systems. But another thing to consider is that Westpac will not be repeating the same behavior of Members Equity Bank. It won't be bailing in people's redraws on their mortgages. Now, I think ME, they acted quite reasonably, but you'd hope they'd understand that just the current situation in the media and maybe inform their mortgage holders. But then again, they wouldn't want to, because then they'll just pull all the money out of there. So, I mean, they acted within the agreement the people had signed. What do you think? Do you think it was fair or unfair? So, Westpac says it is not going to take cash from accounts linked to customers' home loans to help reduce the risk of mortgage defaults, regardless of the state of the economy. Well, they're talking here about offset accounts, which is not what happened. They were taken from the redraw on the mortgages, but still. And the banks can do that. The banks can, all the money you have with a particular bank, they can combine it all together, all your loans, everything, boom, all money's capability. That's the law, guys. It hasn't even crossed my mind, and it's not something we'll be doing, Chief Executive Peter King said. Mr. King made the comments after Members Equity Bank outraged customers last week by changing the rules of its redraw facility without warning customers first. Did they change the rules? I thought that was just part of their terms and conditions. It seems like other banks, Members Equity provides home loan customers with access to a redraw facility. This facility allows customers to make extra mortgage repayments above the required minimum repayments, which can then be counted towards an available redraw, which can be drawn during emergencies to help pay for things such as home repairs or bills. Well, essentially, you're borrowing against your house to pay those things. That's what this is. It's the bank wanting to keep you addicted to that line of credit. That's what it is, guys. You've got to understand what you're actually doing. You need to have other cash set aside for these emergencies. You need an emergency fund. Your emergency fund shouldn't be in your redraw. That's it. Maybe I've just been watching too much Dave Ramsey over the last few weeks, but yes. I mean, should your emergency fund be in an offset account? That's the other question, because, they could draw upon that. But then again, should your emergency fund even be at the same bank? That's the real, that's next level, spreading apart your risk. But ME Bank, which is owned by 26 industry super funds, the unions, angered customers last week without warning. It removed money from some customers had accumulated in their redraw facilities and transferred it to their mortgage accounts, leaving these customers without access to their own funds. It wasn't their own funds. The banks pretty much reduced the line of credit they had on their houses. Is anyone surprised by that? I guess a lot of people were. Remember, the banks aren't your friends, guys. You don't want to be touching that redraw. You want to have other money aside. The redraw, if you need to go through it, you're borrowing money against your house again. 9 newspapers, which first reported the story, quoted a customer who said the bank had removed $24,000 from her redraw facility and transferred it to her home loan without notice, even though most of her home loan had already been repaid. Then why is she worried about it? Don't you want to get rid of your home loan? It came as a huge shock, as the money was considered savings. Exactly, and that is the mistake. It's not savings. I mean, all of your money in the bank, even your savings, is an unsecured line of credit that you provide to the bank. You're an unsecured creditor. So, to be used for urgent home repairs. The timing of this, given the uncertainty of jobs during the pandemic, is despicable to say the least. Just shows a lack of understanding of what they're signing up. At the weekend, ME Bank provided a statement on its website acknowledging some money had been transferred out of some redraw facilities. However, it said the transfers only applied to a portion of legacy loans written more than 5 years ago. ME identified the redraw facility on some legacy home loans could lead to some customers falling behind their original repayment schedules. The redraw facilities give customers access to payments that they have made ahead of their repayment schedule. By not reducing the available redraw amount over time, customers could overuse the redraw to a point where they could fall behind their original repayment schedule. This can put customers at risk of not meeting their repayment commitments, potentially leaving them open to financial hardships at the end of the loan. No money has been removed from customers' accounts. The adjustments made is to the amounts available for redraw. It is understood the change has caused concern to some customers, particularly in the current environment. We're reviewing the personal circumstances of each customer affected and are committed to working with them to determine how we can help with their individual financial needs, the bank said. ME is in the process of contacting affected customers. You know how they'll help. They'll offer people personal loans. What do you reckon? It's no different. It's just a secured personal loan against your house, pretty much. You know, would you borrow money on your credit cards for these emergency repairs? Would you take cash advances? You do it against your house because it's cheaper. It's people borrowing money again. This is the thing. Industry super fund shareholders of Me Bank have demanded an explanation from Me executives about last week's action. Also last week, the actions of Commonwealth Bank were questioned after the bank automatically dropped about 750,000 customers' home loan repayments to the minimum amount. CBA had sent an email to customers advising them of the change and said customers would need to opt out if they wanted to keep making repayments over the minimum amount. I mean, what's the problem with that? It's very easy to change. You just go in there, do a few clicks, and change it. I mean, I do things a bit differently. I always set it at the minimum amount because I'm a small business owner, and then I pay extra in big chunks because I guess I don't have the advantage of having a steady income stream as a small business owner. You get paid in big chunks, and I'm sure other people will appreciate that. If you run a small business, it's the hills and valley method. I had an invoice that we issued in December that wasn't paid until the middle of March. That's just the terms and conditions of the contract we have. You kind of get used to it, particularly in the construction game, everyone. So, yeah, I think this is a storm in a teacup, to be honest. There's going to be a whole lot of customers that didn't even realize they were paying over the minimum, that this might help them out. Financial Counselling Australia Chief Executive Fiona Guthrie said the move would see people who were ahead on their debt payments paying for more interest and being locked in. No, it doesn't. You can just adjust it. Really simple. Do people not understand this? Maybe this is just all showing us what's going on here from Me Bank, CommBank. People just don't understand the agreements they're making with the banks. That's what this is demonstrating. So there we go, and they're talking about Westpac there. So there we have it, guys. Westpac profits plunge. They're not going to pull a Me Bank, so your redraws are safe for now. But really, this is all showing us, I'd argue, that people don't quite understand the relationship that they have with the bank or their banks. And, well, if more drastic measures start happening, if we start getting bail-ins, or if we start getting negative interest rates, how do you think people are going to respond? How do you think people will respond? I think it'll be a shock for a lot of people. I think it will definitely be a shock for a lot of people. As always, thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. If you're a fan and you want to support us, please, there are a few ways you can. We have a Patreon, or you can join YouTube. You can support us via affiliate links at Amazon or eBay, or Independent Reserve or Kucoin. We've got merch from HeiseSays, Gold Pass from the Perth Mint, and PayPal if you want to support us that way. Thanks, guys. Have a great day. I'll see you next time.